My name is Sophia Perri. I'm a freshman and I'm from New York. And my investing niche is private equity and infrastructure, and my AI tool is Meta AI. So I chose private equity because I feel like as opposed to like public equity, private equity firms buy an entire company and work on growing it and then selling it once it's improved. And I think the AI can be really helpful for improving companies. And I chose infrastructure because it's growing a lot right now because of AI data centers and sustainable energy and just like sustainability in general. Um, my main question that I chose to focus on is why prompt specificity matters and how we can optimize our prompts for better results. And another goal of my research is to find out where Meta AI struggles and where it thrives. A quick overview on Meta AI. Meta AI is a large language model powered by Llama, and a large language model is a platform that can process like multiple languages. I think Meta AI has like 26 languages. And then Meta AI is multimodal, meaning it can accept inputs of various forms like video, audio, text, PDFs. And it's also open source, which is really helpful for investors because they can download the software and like tailor it exactly to their needs, whether they need different security or whatever it may be. And then through my initial exploration, some of the weaknesses I found with Meta AI are its ability to recognize and analyze images and figures specifically, and also its difficulty with specificity. A lot of the outputs I got were very surface level and didn't give any insight. Two of the strengths I found are that Meta AI has a very strong database. It dates back to December 2023, which doesn't seem very old, but compared to a lot of other AI platforms, is actually a lot of information. And also its ability to accept so many different input formats makes it really convenient. Um, so as part of my research brief, I chose to investigate what the difference would be between giving it a role-based prompt and a not role-based prompt. In this situation, I asked what stocks I should invest in as a PE investor from New York City and then as a normal person. And when I gave it a role-based prompt, I got not very specific stocks like data centers. It did offer follow-up, which I think felt very collaborative, and I could have like steered the chat in any direction that I wanted to. It factored in risks, which is helpful because, you know, PE investors are using real money and risks could be detrimental to them. And it was very straightforward. There was no like explanations of any of the terms listed. And then when I gave it a not role-based prompt, I got very specific stocks like iShares Global Infrastructure. Um, there wasn't really an opportunity for follow-up, and each financial term had like a definition with it. And it's hard to say which one of these is better because for an actual investor, yes, like they don't need terms explained to them, and they can probably find their own stocks. But I would say for a more amateur person, the more specific stocks and the explanation is really helpful. Um, Next, I tested how the AI would react to prompt context versus no prompt context. For the prompt context, I told it that I was an investor in 2026 looking to invest. And for no prompt context, I just said, can you give me some popular things to invest in? And when I gave the time period and more context, I got more niche trends like battery energy storage. And it also didn't really like give me definitions for anything. It kind of just assumed my knowledge and didn't give very much explanation. Um, when I didn't give any prompt context, I got broader trends like energy infrastructure, and it kind of justified everything that it said. Like for data storage, it said growing demand for data storage. Um, for this one, I would say that the prompt context had a better output because, um, like if you're asking for current trends, it should give you like specific trends like battery energy storage. Um, as a part of my research brief, I also tested what the different outputs between a copy and paste of an article versus a screenshot would be to test like the multimodal aspect of it. And when I copy and pasted the article about energy grids in, it summarized exactly what was in the article and provided a little bit more insight. Like it mentioned that the energy grid from the article seemed to be an older model. And it also took notes of keywords and points by highlighting them. And when I just uploaded a screenshot of the article, it did accurately use the image recognition to summarize exactly what was in the article, but it didn't really go like any deeper and it didn't provide any insight like the copy and paste did. So in this situation, I would say copy and pasting text is better than taking a screenshot. For my main question, how does prompt specificity affect output? I vary the prompt specificities for 4 different prompts and measured the quantity of the information that came out, the quality of the information, and the accuracy. My 4 different prompts were analyze this document, analyze the financially important information in this document, analyze the profit margins from this document, and this one strayed from the others a little bit, but what are good next steps for my business? I was more asking for advice. And I input this like year year-long summary of Granite Construction Inc.'s year-over-year quarterly growth, and the least specific prompt didn't add any extra interpretation. It said upward trend and peak in September, and I think anybody can see that a line going upwards is an upward trend, and a peak in September, like whichever the highest data point is going to be the peak. And there were 3 topics covered in around 4 sentences, which doesn't seem like a lot for 3 entire topics, which just shows that it didn't really analyze anything, it just summarized. Um, the slightly more specific one also didn't really add extra interpretation. It just said steady annual revenue and year-over-year growth rate softens mid-year. So it did bring more financial terms into the summary, but it wasn't really analyzing, it was also just summarizing. Um, the same 3 topics were covered in 9 sentences, which shows that it elaborated a little bit more and brought more numerical values into the output, but also not very helpful for a professional investor. And then the most specific prompt I gave had almost the exact same results as the one before, which kind of highlights Meta AI's inability to produce a deep analysis. I think in the last one, it kind of hit a wall and just couldn't really go any further. Um, and then when I asked for advice, I got advice for my next steps, like monitor the quarterly metric. I think this is actually helpful because like this isn't something that you could just see from looking at the chart. And it adds that any dip may need corrective measures. So I think that could be helpful for an investor and prevent the loss of money. Um, this chart is how I evaluated the different specificities, and the least specific, more specific, and very specific all had extremely similar outputs, mostly just summarizing the trailing 12 months quarterly and year over year, but in varying amounts of sentences. But then the advice prompt took initiative and dove a little bit deeper into the analysis, which is helpful. These are all helpful for amateur investors who are looking to get like an analysis if maybe they're not as proficient in reading charts, but I don't think any of them besides the advice would be helpful for like a professional private equity person. My key takeaways from this are that quantity is not like equal to quality. Like even if there are more sentences, it doesn't mean that the quality of the information is any better. So that shouldn't be assumed. Meta AI succeeds more when it's given freedom to go like past what you ask in the prompt. Like if I just say analyze, it doesn't do much, but if I ask for advice, it's able to elaborate further and I think bring other sources into it. And then from my understanding, the prompt specificity doesn't really affect the output very much, and it's kind of a waste of time to like work super hard on one specific prompt if it's just going to give you the same exact output. Um, and then lastly, the Meta AI isn't capable of like giving very deep insight, and it really just gives a surface level analysis. I think some things that could be improved are figure analysis, like whether it's images, mostly images, but like charts and tables also. I think if the AI was able to better analyze the figures, it would be able to give a deeper understanding and more insightful outputs that are worth the time of wealthy investors. And also, I think if information was pre-programmed into the AI, like when you first download it or use it, I think that would be better because less context would be needed for like quick questions. Um, for our WIF spring project, I think it's helpful because it does have a broad scope of information, and most of us are amateur investors, so it will be able to tell us about past trends and predict future trends. Um, I think it's able to do a light analysis on figures that can be fact checked by us and expanded, but it can be quicker um, for amateurs to just have the AI analyze it, and it was accurately analyzing the figures. Um, Also, because of the strong database, I think Meta AI is a very powerful decision maker, and in a group, there can obviously be differing opinions, so I think it can help to make educated decisions. In conclusion, Meta AI is meant to be used as an assistant and wouldn't really be helpful on its own because it doesn't dive very deep, and we should never trust AI, which can hallucinate, to like do things involving real money. I think we should always be cautious of the hidden limitations because if I hadn't done this research brief, I never would have known like the differences in the inputs I put in. So that's possible in like all sections of AI. And then also it's really inefficient if it's used incorrectly because it takes about as much time for an investor to upload an image into the AI as it would take for them to just do something themselves. So we have to learn how to harness it correctly. Thank you.
I think you did a really good job with your presentation. And my question is, why do you think the more specific and most specific prompts have the same outcome, and what challenges does that present to using the AI?
I think they had the same output because like the AI reached a limit in the more specific prompt and just couldn't get any more information out of the document. So it kind of just said the same thing again. But also, I think the fact that I did it in two different chats, it wasn't really aware that like one was supposed to be more specific than the other. So I think it's just not very sensitive to different prompt specificities. And what was the second part of your question?
What challenges do you think this presents to using it?
I think this just like can be a little bit time consuming if you're spending a long time trying to optimize the specificity of your prompt and still just continue to get the same surface level responses.
Thank you so much for sharing this research. I thought it was really interesting how you framed the different aspects of the outputs, specifically how, something that may not necessarily benefit a more experienced investor could actually experience people like us who are still new and trying to be introduced to this field. So thank you for that. One thing that I was interested in from your presentation is you mentioned how a Meta AI chatbot would ask like follow-up questions and how according to those follow-up questions you could kind of steer the direction of the conversation. Did you find that did you explore like the use of follow-up questions when when doing a specific chat? And did you see that these follow-up questions enhance the specificity of that?
I followed up on the one with the role-based investor and I asked for us like specific data centers and then it like began to give me more specific stocks like the ones that I got out of the not role-based prompt. So I wouldn't say it was like super helpful, but I think if I would have steered it in a better direction, it could have been better. So I think that was more human error and it wasn't really a fault of the AI. And I do think that this could be a very helpful option if I utilized it better.
So you did an amazing job. I'd love to better understand next term, how should we specify our specific roles? Because we're not necessarily experienced PE investors, but we also do want to experience the role of being an investor that does have background. So how should we phrase our role next term when we use law?
Um, I think that we could start out by like honestly maybe faking our role and acting more experienced than we might be, and then working backwards if the output is too complicated. I think it's easier to work backwards and ask what things mean than to have it presented to us like too simplified. So I would say we should start as in like a fake role and then work backwards and ask things to be explained to us.